Thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to get into the newspapers. And this morning I have the Daily Graphic, the Ghanaian Times, the Daily Guide, the Finder newspaper, the Ghanaian Publisher, and a host of other newspapers. And this morning we'll be interacting with Afeo Money, former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. He joins us for a conversation. Mr. Money, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Chief.
It's really good to have you. You are the chief. In this equation, you are the chief. But interesting thought, maybe to kickstart the conversation from an indirect point. When you look at journalists today, broadcast and print, from your time in leadership and now your time reflecting upon what we do from afar, maybe, what do you see? We've had the Journalists Without Borders reports and all of that. We've had the perception about journalists. We've had the reports on, how journalists are treated in the country, global reports. But when you look at the quality of journalism in the country, in both the print and broadcast media, what would be your quick reflection on that today?
To be very honest, professionally, we are doing so well, and there are instances of perpetration of mediocrity. But if you strike the balance between the negatives and the positives, I'm inclined to believe that the positives outweigh the negatives. The plurality is taking root. Robust journalism is on ascendancy. On the flip side, we have instances of journalists with all kinds of agendas.
And I was about to come to that, the element of politics, infiltration, and we have so many political bigwigs owning broadcast media entities and print media entities. Your thoughts on that as well as you move on?
This reignites the issue of ownership structure in the media. In the past, the government was perceived as the #1 enemy of press freedom. But since we embraced the ballot box and discarded the bullet course of choosing our leaders in a referendum in 1982, and that opened the doors for liberalization of the media, to the extent that we have an explosion of media platforms in the country. What it means is that many people have so many access of information. And we are also seeing a massive invasion of the media space by political actors, political parties, crowding out journalists who are noted for aggressive neutrality, like your network, Joy FM and the Joy FM, JoyNews, and the rest. And as I said, the #1 enemy now is no longer officialdom. Those were the yesteryears, those hellish years when we were shackled by all kinds of laws, like the newspaper licensing law, criminal libel law, and all that. Now we have to do frontically with the issue of ownership in the media. Ownership confers control and power on whoever invests in the media system. To the extent that we have a situation where some owners are dictating content. And this is a clear danger to press freedom. In state media houses, especially those owned by politicians, you don't have the latitude to use your common sense to work. Professionalism has gone to the dogs. It is what the media owner says, which holds sway over all others. So we need to orchestrate a national conversation on the dangers posed by media ownership. Because it will get to a space, get to a time where almost all media houses will be owned by politicians because they have the means. And businessmen, it's only businessmen, it's only politicians who are invading the media space with alacrity. Also be the business class, because they know that media will build power. And politicians are addicted to two main things: money and power. So when you have money and power, all other things shall be added onto it. So this is what we need to look at. We've been clamoring for this national competition for time memorial, and this is the time for us to put our together to raise all the issues at a national forum so that we'll see our way clear as far as media freedom is concerned.
The last bit, and just finally, maybe at 40 we can start the conversation with the papers. The last bit I want us to look at on that tangent has to do with the salaries of journalists in this country, print and broadcast. And oftentimes you would hear of how poorly people are paid across the spectrum. When you come to our group, I mean, it's a far more advanced system compared to others, but I'm speaking generally. You go to many places, and when you hear what journalists earn, you would see why sometimes some of them fall prey to corruption from political elements, from other elements, and do stories that shouldn't be done. What is your reflection on that, the remuneration that journalists across the board are given in this country?
There is a direct relationship between the conditions of journalists and their output. It's as simple as that. Journalists who are paid well are less susceptible to fall prey to manipulations by certain forces. Those who are paid abysmally, peanuts, are so vulnerable that they can just take anything to do anything. You know, in some worst case scenarios in Ghana, we have journalists who are not paid at all, and they must survive. As the saying goes, "Man must eat or man must survive," and the survival instinct pushes some of them to criminal height, to the extent that some will malign, some will blackmail, some will dupe, do all kinds of things for the sake of survival. So this prompted the Ghana Journalists Association under my presidency to unionize the association. What it simply means is that we now can serve as intermediaries between our members and their employers, so that in instances of exploitation, we can step in and help save the situation, But the next step after unionization is bargaining power. We are unionizing. The next step was to be in the bracket of Ghana Medical Association and other associations which have the bargaining power to dictate or bargain remunerations which are commensurate with the output of journalists. You know, look, our work is such that we work virtually 24 hours a day. Our working hours are endless. The environment is brusque, and we are faced with all kinds of dangers. So, which means we need to adequately compensate it in line with the work we do. Even when you're home, you'll be thinking of angles, what to do. I believe yesterday you were even thinking of what to do, what angle to take, what agenda to push and all that. So even when you're home, your brains are at work. Others who go to sleep will work between the hours of 8 and 5 or even less and go home. And they are assured even better salaries than journalists who work, whose deadlines are endless, working hours incessant. So we need to, and it is sad that journalists most of the time relegate to the background issues concerning them. You know, we tend to pursue, we want to highlight issues of doctors going on strike, others, you know, who are suffering injustice at the workplaces, whilst keeping a blind eye on what we ought to do as journalists to champion at all costs. So there's a need for a reversal of this situation.
Right.
We need to for the back benefit from them in view of the unique role we play, governance, unique role we play in unearthing dark spots and in fighting corruption and others.
Let's, and I couldn't agree with you more. Let's get into the papers now, and the Daily Graphic is where we're starting from. And right there, the deplorable state of Kolebu roads. Interestingly, today we're talking about road networks as well, with a focus on the Tema motorway. You use that stretch and you have to be really careful because of the different patches in there. We're patching with all kinds of things, and your tires would, I remember some time back being on that stretch and I thought something was wrong with my tires, only to realize that it was the patches that were making the tires sound that way. And I used the stretch very recently. So Kolebu roads now death trap, and we can also talk about the manifold potholes on the Tema motorway stretch. Law to speed up trials in the offing, that's according to the Attorney General. IMF deal will conclude in March, President Akufo-Addo says so. And gold for oil plan, NPA to regulate product prices. Let's get into the stories now, starting with the one to speed up trials in the offing. And the Attorney General will soon lay a bill before Parliament for passage into law to help reduce the menace of unjustified delays in criminal trials in the country. Among other things, the bill will seek an amendment of the rules of court to limit the number of interlocutory applications that can be filed during criminal proceedings and make it hard for parties to circumvent the rules of our court to intentionally delay trials. The Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Godfrey Adami, made this known in an exclusive interview with the Daily Graphic. He said the bill was part of a series of initiatives his outfit was undertaking to reform the criminal justice system of the country. Quoting him, he said, "It is very important that we do this reform. Otherwise, our justice system will virtually become a mockery and people will lose confidence in the administration of justice." That's what he said. In the other story on page 16, I'll just take a quick look at them, Mr. Money, and then we can reflect on them together and move away from the Daily Graphic. On page 16, two stories. Ghana is optimistic of concluding the ongoing negotiations with the International Monetary Fund to get the support of the fund by March. This is because the issue surrounding the domestic debt exchange program, one of the requirements, has been, quote, virtually concluded, paving the way for the country to go the full hog. President Akufo-Addo gave this assurance when he held discussions with the visiting German Federal Minister of Finance, Christian Lindner, last Friday at the Jubilee House in Accra. He said the main concerns of the government included the process of concluding talks with the IMF, as well as the specific assistance that would help Ghana fast-track the process of its economic recovery. Mr. Money, I think I'll pause here and then do the last two stories after you're done reflecting on these two. So the IMF and then hastening the justicial process in terms of court processes. Any quick reactions before we go on?
We don't need any superfluity of evidence to conclude that the IMF rescue package like oxygen. That survival will be next to impossible. So we need to do whatever is possible within our means, whatever strengths we need to pull, whatever negotiations we need to intensify to get the almighty bailout. We are inclined to believe that Ghana is a darling boy of the United Nations, the Paris Club, the West in general, and we can serve a wave of optimism to states that even without a successful conclusion of the domestic debt exchange program, Ghana will leverage its darling boy status, its creditors, to secure the much expected, much needed IMF bailouts by the target date. Aside the example of Tanzania, Tanzania secured its IMF bailouts without concluding its domestic exchange program. So as we speak, Tanzania is also struggling with how to restructure its domestic debt. So we can draw inspiration from what is happening in Tanzania and add it to our special statistics, added to the goodwill we have with the creditor nations. One can conclude that the IMF bailout is coming. So this doesn't mean that we should write roughshod on for example, domestic bondholders. We need to salute most profusely national heroes like Senya Kosi and others who are leading the fight against injustice, be meted or attempt to mete out injustices to domestic bondholders. Whilst we hear conflicting reports, conflicting stories, narratives from the government, specifically Ministry of Finance. One breaks, we hear that there will be no haircuts for domestic bondholders, and a deputy minister will come out to dispute what his own minister has said, and the next day you hear something from certain sources, also pouring water on what had already been said. But the good news is that we reached far in the negotiations apart from the Salabro agreement. So many backdoor negotiations have been done to the extent that one can hopefully state emphatically that the IMF loan will come. But we also need to emphasize that it is not a panacea to all our problems. Many experts believe that what we are going through is self-inflicted. We went on a borrowing and spending binge. We willfully crossed the line of sustainability to the extent that our economy is now on the ropes. The cost of living is vitally bitter, and citizens are feeling the heat. So all this reinforces the need for our negotiators to fast track whatever is being done to ensure that the bailouts lands, the cash lands in the accounts of Bank of Ghana as soon as practicable. On Kolibu is so strategic in terms of her delivery. And 1 minute delay can cause the death of a patient. And potholes can just hinder your acceleration when you are driving. And you have a situation where our major roads are littered with potholes, and in some instances,
right.
And you need to take care, because the lives of the drivers, the lives of caregivers are also important. Under no circumstances will they sacrifice their lives for others. So we are urging the authorities to face the Kolibu roads with urgent promptitude, so that lives will be saved, and it also gives some facelift to such an important facility like Kolibu. And I know the other issue you raised was about.
So you've addressed the first two of them. Of course, there was a bit about Kolibu and the IMF, which you have discussed. There was also the bit about the law to speed up trials in the offing. I don't know whether you have a quick reflection on that.
An old maxim holds that justice delayed is justice denied.
Right.
And we have a litany of instances where cases have run decades. And we also know that it's a fact that some judges under the influence of some litigants will unduly delay cases. And this inflicts on the litigants. So I'm happy that the Attorney General has seen the need to speed up such cases in order to bring relief to the litigants and also to cut down the cost of litigation. This is a step right there.
Let's go to page 20 for the final story from the Daily Graphic and newspaper and quickly get into others. Gold for Oil plan, NPA to regulate product prices and to ensure that the prices of petroleum products imported under the Gold for Oil program reflect at the pumps to benefit consumers. The National Petroleum Authority will regulate the prices of the products in the interim until the volumes increase significantly. In addition, the NPA will work with the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company Limited to negotiate prices with international oil traders to ensure that the landed cost of products procured under the program is always competitive. A statement from the NPA said the price at which BOST would sell the products to bulk import, distribution and export companies, which we call the BIDEX, would be approved by the NPA. And that, quote, the price at which the BIDEX will sell the products to oil marketing companies will also be approved by the NPA. I remember a few days ago reading about how Goyle, the state-owned oil marketer, had claimed that, on the back of the 20% gold for oil that had come into the country, they were reducing their prices of diesel, but not of petrol. And there have also been comments about what this would mean, for example, if we could have not 20%, but 50%, 70%, 100% of our consumption in the country. But there's the other side of the conversation, Afil, where we seem to be getting oil. In fact, we are getting, the first batch was from Russia, not from the UAE. And then there have been concerns about whether it was really gold we exchanged for the oil or we paid hard cash. Some have said that the dynamics surrounding this are not too clear, that the value of gold and all of that could come back to haunt us. What is your quick reflection on this?
Hopes were raised vertiginously, only for them to be dashed with this gold for oil deal. We were told or made to understand that prices of petroleum products were to be reduced significantly as a result of the gold for oil deal. The first consignment came. What we rather saw was an increase in the prices of petroleum products. And this naturally ignited questions about the veracity of the deal, whether we're not being taken for granted by certain people, by politicians again. Many people concluded that it was a case of flattering to deceive.
Right.
We're flattered only for us to be deceived. We're flattered to the extent that now you go to filling stations and you buy petroleum products at very reduced prices. And you rightly said that there are lingering issues about the whole deal. One school of thought is that it's to be sent to Parliament in order to be subjected to the much needed scrutiny. There are so many dark areas which ought to be examined. The public, under the right to know law, the public had the right. It's not a luxury to tell Ghanaians how their gold is being used and how much they deserve to pay for their petroleum prices. So all this calls for transparency. So we need to heighten our game of transparency as far as the gold for oil deal is concerned.
Right.
I'm happy that the MP has come in. I believe Mustafa Hamid will infuse his high sense of dynamism into this whole deal. So while we buy petroleum products at cheaper prices comparatively, the public will be apprised adequately about the genuineness of the deal, so they all buy into it.
Right. Let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Gold for oil deal, fuel prices to reduce by March. That's according to the MPA. The story is on page 13. Parliament reconvenes tomorrow. And there's also Adregano land dispute. Top Kings Limited, Nungwa Stool rightful owners. That's according to Benjamin Akakpo. President Akufo-Addo accepts resignation of Chieftaincy Minister, appoints Dan Boche as caretaker minister. A sad development there. We've known about some of the surrounding issues, and the president has accepted his resignation, appointing Dan Boche as caretaker minister. Military restores calm to Mami Krobo after averting reprisal on nomadic herdsmen. We have reprisal attack here, but editor of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, a reprisal is, a return attack. So you don't need attack there. It's interesting because I heard on the BBC of all places, someone saying reprisal attack. Anyway, so let's get into those stories, starting with the one on page 13. The National Petroleum Authority has assured the public that the Gold for Oil, that is the G4O initiative, will meet 50% of the country's oil demands by March 2023. According to the MPA, this would lead to lower ex-pump prices in the country. There's also this story that I'd like us to quickly get into on page 4. So Parliament will reconvene tomorrow to commence the first meeting of the third session of the 8th Parliament of the Republic. A commencement instrument signed by the Speaker of Parliament, Albert Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, appointed Parliament House, Accra, as the venue, and 10 o'clock afternoon as the time for the first sitting of the meeting. The recall is in line with Article 112 of the 1992 Republican Constitution. During the 10-week meeting, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, would be expected to deliver a message on the state of the nation pursuant to Article 67 of the Constitution. Quick reflections: fuel prices to reduce by March, but we've seen an uptick again. They've gone close to 16 cedis. We're paying 13 cedis something. Now they're going close to 16 again. And the hard currencies are beating our currency one more time. And then this bit about Parliament reconvening. Quickly, what would be your assessment of our 8th Parliament as of this point? How do you think we are fared?
To be fair, and to be honestly brutally honest, the 8th Parliament, to a very large extent, has lived up to expectation. I believe because of the hang nature of the representations of MPP and NDC. The two main parties are equally matched, and this has brought a semblance of fairness in debate, a semblance of seriousness in how they tackle their issues, as compared to previous parliaments, where one parliament had dominance over the other. One party had dominance over the other. We also had debates were conducted. Parliament was reduced to a rubber stamp. Everything from executive received automatic endorsement because the opposition lacked the numbers to argue, let alone halt the imposition of all kinds of policies, of all kinds of laws on the good people of Ghana because of the weak numbers of the opposition. The 8th Parliament changed the scenario, the dynamics different, and this inured to a democracy. So if our democracy is robust, more robust than what it used to be, credit must be given to Parliament, to the leadership of the opposition in standing up to dictatorial tendencies on the part of the majority. Naturally, Parliament from tomorrow will be the spotlight of national or even international attention because of the exciting or interesting precedent over the leadership of the minority group in particular. We were made to understand by one of the factions in the minority that the changes or the changes effected by the NDC are yet to take place because the Speaker is yet to communicate same to the House. In other words, we are told that the changes are final and that we see a new crop of leaders when Parliament resumes tomorrow. So it will be an interesting scenario. I believe that we see battery of journalists more than ever before. The number will rise higher than what we used to see because of the juicy news angles, which Parliament will hopefully provide tomorrow. So we expect our people to go there and inform the people accordingly about development in Parliament. I believe some will sensationalize as they usually do, and some will be objective. But in the name of professionalism, we expect journalists to paint the picture as it is from tomorrow in Parliament, so that we all follow and then take the right decisions based on reporters will tell us. And back to the assurance that petroleum prices reduce from reduce as a result of vote for oil deal. And the irony is that prices are rather rising. So as you speak, GPRTU is meeting to adjust prices upward. And this will also inflate additional hardship to commuters who need transport, public transport, to get to their places of work. So this should be done. We are expecting NPA, please, in the name and on behalf of the suffering masses, do what is practically possible.
Right.
Ensure that prices of petroleum products are reduced because of the rippling effect of such increases on the livelihoods of the people.
Mr. Modi, we have to go in just about a minute and a half. I'll summarize some of the stories we'll look at. Daily Guide, Tender Committee queries GRA on ITAS contract. There's Nana Lobby's Paris Club to help restructure debt, the G20, among others. Asante Akim Central, NPP, boils. There's also the Finder newspaper, $700 million second gas processing plant to be completed within 24 months. I'm sure you've heard of that commitment. And you can also read about the Gold for Oil program explained in 14 points. We have a similar story on myjoyonline.com where you can get a complete analysis of what it is. Premix fuel subsidy hits 264.8 million Ghana cedis last year. This one I'd like you to take a quick look at. It is Alan's time, Omanhene of Goso, says so, and the campaign of leading contender for the ruling governing New Patriotic Party flag bearer race, Kwejo Alan Chemating, has received a major boost from the paramount chief of the Traditional Council in the Ahafo region. There's also Ablakwa tramples on court documents as Reverend Kusi Boateng secures restraining order. I don't know whether you've seen the video, but he is accosted. He refuses to take the court summons, so to speak, and then he basically kicks it aside. Any quick reflections on these two stories? And that is how we'll conclude with the news review.
Honorable Ablakwa is a lawmaker, so one is inclined to believe that he will obey the laws of the land in line with his status, vociferous status as a lawmaker. we are governed by laws, and we are not in a jungle, so we expect the laws to be respected. And I believe he has consulted the lawyers on how to navigate the waters in which he finds himself. And at the end of it all, the law must be respected. Otherwise, you'll be setting a bad example for others who have little or no regard for our laws. And the issue involving Ablakwa and Reverend Kusubatin is so interesting. But he deserves credit for his crusading role in unearthing what is happening in the National Secretariat of the Cathedral. And I believe the case Shrag is going into the issue, and we also urge Shrag to come out as soon as possible to help bring finality to the whole matter. It is interesting to know that the spikes are out and the race is effectively on for the MPP flag bearership. Alek Ojumra seems to have taken the lead in the race to secure the title to run as presidential candidate of MPP. So far, one would say so far so good for him. Others have also announced their intention to contest the flag bearership. The other day it was Apreku, and who never said that spirit prompted me to jump into the fray. But it will be interesting to see how Alan will square it out with the vice president, who has not given up at all his intention to also taste presidential power. And Japan is also causing waves. And the analysts will tell him never write him out. Not at all, because he has grassroots support, and the grassroots will keep faith with him. And this can cause a dent in the fortunes of both Alan and Vice President Bawumia. So it's interesting to see how all this will pan out.
Right. Well,
in the name of that, we expect them to play it fair and not go the British way.
Thank you so much, Mr. Money, for engaging us this morning. And I am particularly grateful for your reflections on journalism in the country at the start of the review. We wish you the best of the day, sir.
God bless you and your viewers.
And that's former president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Afil Money, joining us for a conversation. Up next, we serve you sports on the AM show. And after that, we get into our big stories. Don't you forget, we're talking about the domestic debt exchange program and the poor state of our roads with a focus on the Tema motorway. But for now, let's settle for sports.